Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Football Palestine Extra. For those of you who are new here, what we do on this podcast is we break down everything that's happened over the past week in Palestinian football. This piece of content is, as you can guess by its name, it's extra. It's for our premium paying subscribers. What I'm doing this week is shifting things up a little bit. The entire episode will be free, so if you like what you hear and you want to see more of this type of content on a weekly basis, consider subscribing to Football Palestine and upgrading to a paid subscription. Shifting gears a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the news this week. I just dropped the latest episode of Scoreless at the Break. That's a 6-part original audio series that I put together that chronicles the political schism that happened in 2006-2007 between Hamas and Fatah that really led to the political situation that we are in today, but with an interesting twist in that it's told through the lens of the Palestine national football team. This latest episode 5, is called The Strong Man. It chronicles the rise to power of Jibril Rajoub, who's been the PFA president now for the past coming on 18 years. And I think this might be my favorite episode because in my research, I just discovered so many interesting things about this guy. For example, do you know his brother is a member of Hamas? They ran in the same election and he lost to him by 20,000 votes back when they had the legislative elections in 2006. That was just one interesting bit of information that I was able to uncover in my research. So really, really interesting. I think facts and context for a man who likes to say that before he arrived on the scene, Palestinian football was nothing but a bag of sand. And I think this episode will provide the necessary clarity as to why that statement is so false. So if you're interested in that content, if you're interested in this content, consider subscribing. It would really help me keep the lights on over here. So this week, I had an entire episode sort of planned, and then I had to shift gears because obviously over the weekend we saw what happened in our region, in West Asia, and this attack that Israel and the United States launched on Iran, and the Iranian response right now that is leaving a lot of countries in turmoil, to say the least. Now, for those of you eagle-eyed readers of Football Palestine, you will have known this because it came up live on our website because it was a scheduled post, but I didn't actually push it through our social media channels. We do have one piece of very important information to cover that is purely football related, and that is Rami Hamad, Palestine's starting goalkeeper, has a new club. He signed for Muslan. They're in the Qatari Stars League. They're struggling in the relegation zones a little bit. They fired Patrice Carenton, and they have a new Spanish manager at the helm. They also said goodbye to the services of Mahmoud Wadi, and now Rami Hamad, who managed to get the exemption, which was super important for him because without the exemption he cannot play. It's not like they could register him as a foreigner. Foreign goalkeepers aren't allowed in the QSL or in the Qatari second division, which is why he had to leave Al Markhiyah at the beginning of this season. So I think really good move for Rami Hamadi here, a move that he deserves. I think he will be able to affect the team positively. The reason why Muslan wanted him is because their starting goalkeeper went down with a season-ending injury, and basically the replacements have not been up to snuff. So I think when and if play resumes in the Qatari Stars League, it should bode well for Muslan. I sort of liken this transfer almost to the transfer of Atal Jaber to Qatar SC last year, in that he came and he made an immediate impact. And I think Rami Hamadi will do the same thing for Muslan. I think I've mentioned this many times that his stats, they just speak for themselves. The fact that he's played for Palestine, I think 64, 65 official matches. He's got 31 clean sheets. If you look at the official matches, the competitive matches, it's something ridiculous. It's like 22 clean sheets and 41 competitive starts. Just insane stats. So he deserved a big move. This is a move that will keep him in action until the end of the league season. And then the two sides will try and work out a way to extend him further. So really good news there. I think that sort of brings to a close all the transfer activity. Maybe in a future episode, we'll kind of rate the transfers. Maybe when we have a little bit more context, maybe closer to the end of the season, to see how all the new faces did in new places, so to speak. But that's kind of where we're going to stop now with the purely Palestinian perspective to the news this week, because I have to address what's going on, because it's going to have an effect on football. And I think that's becoming more and more obvious. Now, we hope that the war ends for the benefit of, I think, humanity, first and foremost. But if it does continue, we are going to see a knock-on effect, not just in football, but in all aspects of life. I'll leave the geopolitical part of it aside, but just the leagues in the region. When war broke out, basically every single league in West Asia had announced, they had suspended activity. That is no longer the case, in that UAE, I believe, is back online. Saudi Arabia is back online. Qatar and Iran are still not. Obviously, from a Palestinian perspective, Qatar is very important because there are 9 or 10 players that play professionally there. But both those leagues are scheduled to come back in about 2 weeks' time. So we're talking about 15th, 16th, 17th of March is when they're sort of anticipating to be able to play. Qatar took this decision, I think, out of an abundance of caution. But this is serious, and I think one of the things that we have seen over the past couple of days is that air travel has been completely paralyzed. And West Asia is just so important. Those hubs of Doha, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they're so important for travel that if you want to get from the eastern side of the world to the western side of the world, you have to cross over the middle. And this is the middle. And this is going to have really, really, really big effects on the World Cup playoff, the interconfederational playoff that is set to take place, at the end of this month. And for our region, for Asia, that means Iraq. Can Iraq travel to Mexico, to Monterrey, and play that playoff match against the winner of the first round, which will be against Bolivia and Suriname? And right now, Graham Arnold, who I think was en route to Iraq to kind of oversee the final proceedings, select his squad or at least the local part of his squad, meld that with the players based abroad, and then travel onwards to Mexico, is stuck in Dubai, and he hasn't been able to leave. What a lot of people in Dubai have been able to do, or have tried to do, is to cross over into Oman, where there's still a little bit more air traffic, and to take a flight from there and travel onwards. The other thing he possibly could do is travel by land, and the Iraqi FA put out a statement recently, I think yesterday, addressing the fact that air travel is going to be difficult, but they're studying basically all the logistics that would be needed to get this team to the World Cup playoff. Again, not a lot of flights, very few flights coming out of Jordan, very few flights coming out of Oman. I think maybe some flights coming out of Saudi Arabia, at least on the western coast. But it's kind of just a big blank area over the Arabian Peninsula where no flights are happening. So this could affect Iraq and their ability to get to the World Cup, because if they're going to have to add a day of travel just to catch their flight, it makes things very difficult. I think the Iraqi government will intervene. There were discussions about allowing them to kind of use the presidential jet to get to Mexico, and I think they'll have to find an arrangement that means they fly private, because I just don't see how you can get out of the region on a commercial airliner, right? Like, okay, all that traffic will be maybe diverted to Istanbul, which is another major major travel hub, but Istanbul's a ways away from Baghdad, right? Especially if you travel overland. So again, I think we're going to see knock-on effects from this, and if the war does not end in 2 weeks, it's going to make things very difficult for Iraq, and I think it'd be a shame. I really think it would be a shame if this is what prevents Iraq from getting to the World Cup. I think I've been on record saying that I believe they deserve to go. If you're going to have 8 teams from Asia, I thought they were definitely amongst the 8 best. They ended up being the 9th best, so to speak, but we do know that the margins between them and Jordan were very thin in that qualifying group that we were all in alongside the Palestine national team. They did prove that they were better than the UAE, and Saudi Arabia had the benefit of extra rest and still couldn't beat them. Now, I think Iraq will be kicking themselves that they didn't beat Indonesia by a larger margin, which would have meant that their decisive game against Saudi Arabia could have sent them through with a draw in that round 4 matchup. But I still think that this is a team with some quality, and a team that if they do go to the World Cup, although they're in a very, very tough group, will give a good account of themselves. I also think the fact that they bought in Graham Arnold after firing Jesus Casas was the right decision. This is a man who knows World Cup playoffs. He's guided Australia through one before, and he knows World Cup finals because he's been at World Cups as an assistant, and he's been to World Cups as a manager, and we all remember what he did in Qatar as head of the Socceroos. So watch this space. We'll see what happens. Shifting gears a little bit, the other topic that has been, I think, top of mind for a lot of people is, well, if the United States and Iran are at war and the next World Cup is in the United States and Iran has qualified for said World Cup, will that actually go ahead? Will it actually happen? And I think it will. Obviously, we're going to have to color that statement with what we know now, but I think as long as there's no major escalation, right? If it continues in sort of like the way it's been over the past couple of days, then yeah, I do think that Iran will travel to the United States and will compete at the World Cup. And I do think that there are positive signs from the American end in that it doesn't seem that anyone is really blocking or wants to block their participation. Trump was asked about this at a press conference yesterday, and he said he could care less. And people saw that as a negative. I actually think that's as a positive. Trump is known to speak his mind, and if he didn't want them coming, he would have said, no, absolutely not. I think Gianni Infantino is hoping, given the fact that he's spent, the past, I don't know how many years licking the boots of Trump. He's been at the White House so many times. He's involved in this ridiculous Board of Peace initiative, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I think he's really hoping that Trump doesn't intercede and block Iran's participation. No one from the White House has said that they'll be blocked. The Athletic put out an article, I think today, and they spoke to Darren Lahoud, who is there's something called the Soccer Caucus in the American Congress, I suppose. So I guess he's a soccer fan, and he's on some sort of committee for the World Cup as well. He spoke quite highly of the Iranian national team and said he'd love for them to participate. Various officials from the United States Soccer Foundation also reiterated that they wanted them to participate. So I don't think there's going to be anything blocking them per se, even with all the chaos and disruption that happened since Trump came back to the White House, namely with revoking visas and preventing travel from certain countries. There was always a carve out for athletes and officials involved in sport. Now, that might have been something that Infantino got as a result of just his intense lobbying efforts. It could just be that Trump is a sports fan and didn't want that affecting the Olympics and the World Cup. The next Summer Olympics is due to be held in Los Angeles, by the way. So if the United States isn't going to block them, then the only thing is if Iran themselves decide to withdraw. And the Iranian FA hasn't said a lot. The Football Federation there has been quiet. Mehdi Taj was interviewed, or he gave a statement, and he said, "We cannot look to the next World Cup with any hope." And people sort of interpreted that they might withdraw. I have a different analysis. I actually think that the disruption means that the preparation won't be as good. That goes without being said. If your league is going to get disrupted, if travel gets disrupted, and if all of a sudden maybe the friendlies that you had slated for March don't go ahead, then you're not really giving your national team, your coaching staff, the best platform to prepare. And that means your hope of making it out of the group stage for the first time in your history has taken a hit. That's how I interpreted the statement. I think other people are within their rights to interpret it that maybe the government will order them to withdraw. But I also don't see why Iran would necessarily do that. A lot of people don't realize that the people in power in Iran actually have sons and daughters that are educated in the West and actually even still live in the West. Halil Arjani, who is, I think, a security advisor to the government and was mentioned as one of the people who might be the next supreme leader, his daughter, I think it's his daughter, either his son or his daughter, is actually a doctor educated in the United States and I think still practicing medicine in the United States. So I don't think they would withdraw. I still think it would be a coup for them to go and participate in a sporting event in the United States. It would be kind of a show of soft power. And again, I don't want to make this an episode about geopolitics, but if Iran wants to quote unquote win this war or repel the invasion or however you want to put it, one of the things they need to do is have global public opinion on their side. And I do think, given the illegality of this war, global public opinion, I can speak for people in Europe, is on Iran's side. And people are not so supportive of U.S.-Israeli action. Why would they be? They've been witnessing a complete horror show in Gaza for the past 2.5 years. So interesting to see what happens. If I had to bet right now, I would say World Cup goes ahead with 48 teams. Iran will participate. Iraq hopefully will make it through to the interconfederation playoff, and then we're not talking about, Iraq takes Iran's place and UAE takes Iraq's place and all that. And by the way, we don't even know how it would work if there was a withdrawal. There are no rules surrounding that. Basically, FIFA could decide. FIFA could decide, we want Nigeria at the World Cup, and it would have to be Nigeria, so because they say so. That brings us to our last point, which I think is relevant to the war that's going on right now in the region, and that is Israel's suspension from UEFA/FIFA. More UEFA than FIFA, because I think Infantino has said quite clearly that he doesn't want to suspend Israel, and in his mind that the conflict in Gaza has been quote unquote resolved. I don't know what planet he's living on, but give me whatever he's on, because he's definitely on the happy pills. I think what's happened over the past couple of days will make the possibility of Israel being suspended even more likely. And having sort of watched what's going on and the pressure campaigns on Israel and on bodies really to kick Israel out of football, I think the tipping point won't be anything behind closed doors. It won't be a vote that happens in a canton in Switzerland about UEFA's tax-exempt status. I don't think that will be the tipping point. I think the tipping point really will be when somebody directly tied to football, meaning a football player or coach says, no, we're not doing this. We're not going to do this. Consequences be damned, but we're not going to play this match. And if you want to suspend us, suspend us. And if you've ever seen kind of like the analysis of how a crowd forms, it takes one person. It's always like one person who sticks their neck out, and then he brings another person, and then that just results in a critical mass of people joining, and then all of a sudden you have this big crowd. And everything I've heard since they've done the draw for the UEFA Nations, like that pitted Ireland against Israel in the UEFA Nations League Tier B, I guess it's called. And then I don't know what group they are, but they're in a group with Austria and Kosovo. Ever since that, yeah, the FAI came out and said, we're definitely going to play the match. And the Irish government, which, by the way, I don't think a lot of people realize is a right-wing government, a coalition government made out of the center-right and center-left, so to speak, parties. But ever since the government came out and the FAI came out and said, we have to play this match, we don't really like it, but we have to do it, it's a commitment we have to honor, there has been a complete repulsion expressed by the general public and expressed on TV by various pundits. The former manager, Stephen Kenny of the Irish national team, another former manager, Brian Kerr, came out and said very strongly that the match shouldn't be played. Just yesterday, Katie McCabe, who's the captain of Ireland's women's team, also reiterated that the match shouldn't be played. So they're still a long ways away. I think the match is due to take place on October 4th. But Israel engaging in another illegal, immoral war and killing hundreds of civilians in the process, at least at the time of recording. It might be more by the time you see and hear this, unfortunately. I think just makes the suspension that much likely because it keeps basically the issue top of mind. And one of the things, unfortunately, that happened when this farce of a ceasefire was announced in October of last year was that Gaza went a little bit off the radar. So much so that an idiot like Gianni Infantino comes out and says, "Oh, the issue has been resolved, so we don't need to do anything," as if there aren't like 1,000 athletes and sportsmen that were killed. Like that, just they get a mulligan. It's okay. We can just go about our daily lives now that it's over. We don't prosecute people for crimes they committed. So if you're caught in the middle of the robbery, you'll get arrested. But if you've already robbed the place and you got away, well, at least it's over now, right? So we can just continue, and the thief can enjoy the spoils of his loot. That seems to be the logic that Infantino is using right now. And to be fair, it's the logic kind of the people in power have used as well, to say like, oh yeah, but there's a ceasefire, so let's give this thing a chance, even though Israel violates the ceasefire on a near daily basis. But so I think the fact that there is something like this war, unfortunately, that is top of mind, that is going to affect a lot of people very, very directly. I think people who live far away from the region have already been affected by the fact that, yeah, if you had a flight connecting through Doha, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, you no longer have that flight. If you were traveling, you might be stuck in one of those cities, unfortunately. 1 million Americans live in the region. I would think that there's similar numbers of British people, Europeans as well. All of those people that went to Dubai to make some money are all kind of in this weird situation now. And then again, if the war drags on, we're all going to pay the price in one way or another, where it will be very obvious to you that, oh yeah, this war, which was illegal and totally something the U.S. and Israel decided to do that wasn't necessary, there's no imminent threat, has now resulted in not only thousands of deaths, but it also means that whatever you were paying for groceries, well, that's more expensive now. Whatever you were paying for gas, that's more expensive now. Whatever you were paying for energy to heat your house, that's more expensive now. So all those things are going to happen, especially if this war unfortunately drags on. So my analysis is that if it does, that will only increase the calls for Israel to pay a price in a sporting and cultural sense, which would mean them getting kicked out of UEFA. But again, I am of the opinion that the tipping point will be when an athlete or a club or a national team says, no, I'm not going to do this. I know you might make me forfeit. I know you might fine me. I know you might suspend me, but I don't care. I'm not going to do this. And that's just my take. So I'll leave it here for this week. Hopefully next week we can speak a little bit more about football, especially football from the Palestinian perspective. But yeah, this thing happened. It was too important not to talk about. Again, if you made it to the end of the episode, thank you for supporting Football Palestine. Please consider taking a paid subscription to help support my work. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.